All right, we're live. Well, here we go, folks. I wanted to continue our session here. I got a lot of requests, and a lot of the requests I got were, come on, Dan, this AI and automation thing isn't anything. It's going to go away. I have tons and tons of friends, like on Facebook and in other places, that are absolutely oblivious to the AI and what it's actually how it's going to change the marketplace. For somehow, I guess they have some sort of Facebook immunity to AI, and they're not going. They think somehow by ignoring it, it's going away. Here are some recent titles I've been grabbing. I grabbed these titles off of several news services. Bank CIO, we don't need AI whizzes, we need critical thinkers. We need both, right? How AI is transforming keyword research. AI and marketing are going hand in hand. It's doing a fantastic job of helping write blogs. Despite Google's update, it's out there. Ready or not, AI agents are coming. Remember, I told you I have this agent. Well, I have a couple agents. One in particular that can solve captchas, right? You can do all sorts of amazing things with it. It can open up desktops. It can spawn multiple agents. I mean, you're not even aware of some of the things that it can actually do. RPA, robotic process automation, how it's going to change that. Everyone will have an opportunity to have these little bots on their desktop to do all sorts of great things, right? Look at LinkedIn. If you're using LinkedIn, you're being inundated with, hey, use it to improve your about me section and your resume and all that great stuff. And who's not using Google? Who's not using AI in their Google Sheets? I am amazed and blown away at all the AI that is embedded in Google Sheets and the things that you can do with it, and using other apps, how it can send emails and respond to things like, project management is a breeze now, with AI and Google Sheets and those other apps and all the APIs that are actually taking place. But we're going to go off topic a little bit because I've been asked to jump ahead towards strategic thinking. There's certain catchphrases that drive me crazy, right? When I see people say, I'm a critical thinker, we've already been through the critical thinker exercise and some of the key questions you can ask to unmask that false critical thinker. Complex problem solver. I'm a complex problem solver, Dan. Right? We know how to unmask those complex problem solvers, but there's hope. These skills all can be developed. So there's a lot of hope there, folks. We talked about data literacy, how everyone's going to have to learn how to be more data literate, if you will. That's understanding how to communicate data. And that includes my favorite topic of statistical thinking and reasoning, right? That's where people fall off that bandwagon. So when people tell me they're data driven, I immediately go to my fallback question. Well, tell me about the variation in your data. Let's understand what's driving in that. And that's where the critical thinkers start to stutter and stammer. And they sound like Porky Pig. Remember Porky Pig? So we talk in data analytics. People, admittedly, I'm not good with data. I don't want to be involved in data. Data analytics is going to be critical going forward. Innovation. How do we master innovation? How do we innovate with purpose and intent to knock things out? I'm telling you, there are so many fantastic AI agents and bots that will create new services that you never exist. I just told you, Google Sheets has fantastic AI applications built into it. But the one we're jumping ahead to is the strategic thinking and thinker. Right? Those are the ones that drive me insane because it's catchphrases. You'll hear the catchphrase, I'm a critical thinker, I'm data driven, and we've dispelled what these people actually look like. I'm a complex problem solver. And then the last one that really gets underneath my skin is this, I'm a strategic thinker, right? And what does that really mean? So we just went over the skills that are still going to be in demand in this beautiful age of AI, according to the Book of Dan, right? I like to call this a reading from the Book of Dan. What does it look like going forward? But we're going to hone in on strategic thinking because that's what I've been requested to hone in on. Right. When we think about strategic thinking and tactical thinking, there are two different things. Most people have been tactical in one way or another. They need to carry out they need to carry out objectives laid forth by their goals. And they see this as being strategic in nature, which it really isn't. So we need to ensure that as we're going forward, at least we have the same baseline understanding. So let's start on the right hand side with tactical. This involves things to meet specific objectives. I think about an organizational construct as goals, objective, measures, targets, right? So we can lay it out about how to do an actual strategic plan. Tactical thinkers are the ones that are carrying out the objectives related to the goals in that strategic plan. And they're really short term, and it's really an immediate and operational focus. This is 99.9% of what actually is getting done in today's world, and yet people consider it strategic. It's short term based, right? It's concerned about implementation and how we get things done. So a lot of people will think that and misconstrue this as being strategic in nature. If you're not setting the direction and shape of the organization in the future, you're not in that strategy capacity. But yet we see a lot of people think that's strategic. It's a nice word to have on your resume. I'm a strategic thinker. Data driven strategic thinker solves complex problems. But that's tactical. On the left hand side here, being strategic is setting the overall goals, where we plan on going as an organization. It's big picture, it's longer term, it encompasses, basically your entire organization. Most people have never been in this role. I would argue to be strategic also means to have carried this strategy out 3 or 4 years, right? So we know that in the past, people would say strategy is about setting a 5 year look ahead of where we're going to be and how we're going to get there. The market has changed significantly since that. It's shorter term in nature. But also, one of the key things for me is, have you been there? Not just to say, articulate some vision, right? We have a lot of people out there, and unfortunately, you know, I put the public sector, and you have people working in like governments and short-term things. You're not setting the long-term range and vision of an organization. You've already have these limited constraints. It's not visionary in any real way, but it's understanding and seeing that execution. We know that good strategic planners and strategic thinkers have a plan B in place. They have a fantastic way of measuring and understanding, are we meeting our strategy? Is the strategy going to be executed? Can we actually complete this, right? They're oriented to those goals. But at the same time, they're monitoring, where are we going? What's happening? Is there something in the marketplace that's taking place? They have the ability to set the goal for that industry and organization. So I challenge you, go on LinkedIn. I love going on LinkedIn and seeing who the data-driven, strategic thinkers, complex problem solvers are, and just ask them a few of the questions that we've learned. I actually put together a hit list of 10 questions, and I forgot to put it in this little mini deck that we're going to do. 10 questions that will quickly expose the strategic thinker for tactical thinking and purpose, right? So I wanted a way of differentiate. I get asked quite a bit, hey, can you talk to this person, see if they're really a strategic thinker? So I'll go in and ask a handful of questions. And as I said, 99.9% of people are in a tactical world. They're not in a strategy world. For me to be a strategic thinker, you've had to fallen on that sword a couple times, right? I can't tell you how many strategies I've been part of that we've laid out, and then all of a sudden something in the industry totally changes it, and then we need to do a quick pivot and go back in a different direction. You get to feel that pain. But there's other people that are there just like, we have these goals and objectives, and that's what they do, and off they go. Okay, so I just wanted to set the direction between strategic and tactical, often confused, and I think often confused intentionally, right? People are hammering. They want to be known as a strategic thinker. They want to be known as data driven, but they're not really put in those positions. They don't really have that skill. They don't really have that experience, right? I mean, the first time you're in a full blown strategy mode where you're setting strategy, and it starts to go wrong, woof, your heart is racing, you're sweating, right? You're figuring out what we can do there. Hopefully, you have your plan B in place that you can go back on. So, what's strategic thinking? It's very, as I said earlier on, in this age of AI and automation, it's really, really in demand, right? But so we know AI is going to take care of routine things. We know AI is going to anything rules based or is involved with measuring and monitoring, sending emails like accounting, bookkeeping, legal, project management. All those things are going to be take a heavy hit from AI, right? But strategic thinking involves this level of analysis. Remember, we talked about critical thinking, complex problem solving. So strategic thinking involves that kind of analysis and understanding and vision to set things forward, right? To understand how we're going to put that plan in place. What are the things that are going to be in need right now? Strategic thinking. Go on LinkedIn when we're done here. Go look for strategic thinkers and see what they have in their backgrounds. Were they responsible for setting the future of the organization, putting those controls, those measuring, monitoring, and systems in place? I bet you they haven't. Right? I know most of the facts because I peruse LinkedIn. I have almost 20,000 people on LinkedIn. All of them almost have senior level strategic thinkers, and I know for a fact they're not. What is strategic thinking? Right. It's deep analysis, foresight, creativity to develop strategies for these complex problems, right? And to capitalize on these opportunities. Focus on long term. It's not just setting up the plan, it's being there and eating your own dog food. When you fall down, how do we measure and monitor this going forward? Because things always change. You have to be nimble, right? So strategic thinking is about thinking about those things. You can be in an organization and say, oh, well, we'll use a little foresight here to operate in our tactical world. But I want to keep the eye on strategic, which is at a corporate level, at that leadership level of driving initiatives and setting the bounds. So what are the key components, right? That's one of the questions is, Dan, well, how do we evaluate it? You just said you can interview somebody and whack, 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 figure it out, just like start immediately crossing them off the list, right? As strategic thinkers. Analytical clarity, right? If they can't break things down into issues and understand those measurable components, understand data, you're out the door. Don't tell me I'm this great visionary thinker. I see this and I see that. If we can't deconstruct it into components that we can logically put in order and create objectives and measures for people to follow up, we're nowhere, right? Just being a great out of the box thinker doesn't make you a strategic thinker, right? Creative problem solving. How do we really think about these problems? How do we deconstruct them again with data? How do we use those different perspectives? Critical thinking, right? Creative problem solving is preceded by creative thinking, critical thinking. You can't have one without the other. There's some foresight here. Being strategic thinkers are okay with change, right? Anticipating needs, seeing what's going on in the future. If you're already, I've been involved with AI for quite a few years, right? And I think it was about 3 years ago, I started sounding the alarm. AI is coming. I've been training AI. Here are all the great things it can do. Now, all of a sudden, it's here. If you're just finding out about it now and catching up, good for you, because I can tell you, go make a post on Facebook and see if any of your friends or family members really care about AI. It's astonishing how ignorant they are to it. Holistic integration. How do we integrate all this great stuff into something that's actually going to be executable, right? We have customers, we have employees, we have processes, right? We have other people involved in our systems that we need to look at. How do we measure? How do we monitor? All those great things about how do we align with this organization. Saying a strategy and just go do it doesn't work, right? It's like telling if you have an overweight kid, go lose weight. That's not going to work, right? What's going to be that strategy? Adaptive execution. Oh, I was part of an organization where we developed a strategy, and it was far from adaptive. It was committed, but this is the conditions. This is what we set forth. Despite all the measures and trends we were seeing in the marketplace, they did not want to move and they got crushed, right? But it's not because we got caught blindsided. It's because we didn't have that adaptability. And then, of course, being able to influence people. There's no process or organization that is operating at its current level that someone just doesn't like it the way it is. How do we communicate this? How do we get people engaged so that they actually want to be part of this and help us drive this forward? There's no, there's going to be people that you're going to start talking about AI in your organization, which hopefully you are talking about AI in your organization, but they're going to want to dismiss it. They want to sabotage it. Don't think that everyone, no matter what your culture is, don't think that everybody's like, all right, I'm in. A lot of people don't like change. They just want to get through the day so they can go home and grow their tomatoes. So here are some of the unique attributes, and I'd love to know what you think. Right, complexity navigation. How do we navigate ambiguity and complexity? There's a lot of complexity in the world today, right? And it drives me crazy when people say, it's a complex problem. Well, explain it to me. If your best bet when someone's asking you something is to say, oh, it's really complex, that means the person telling you it's complex doesn't understand it themselves. Good leaders understand complexity and they know how to break complexity down to individual components so the average person can understand it. Go listen to some politics. I love it this time of the year. It's the political time of the year. Go listen to the politicians. Oh, it's complex. That's your immediate clue that I don't know what the hell's going on. I was told to vote on a particular thing this way. Ambiguity. If you're not good with ambiguity, you're in for it, right? This is part of the good strategic thinking. I teach Lean Six Sigma courses, black belts, green belts, and yellow belts. And we are seeing the people coming in for this training who just want to fill in the blanks. I call them certification chasers, right? They're collecting all these certifications and they have them listed on their LinkedIn profile. And they just want to fill in the blanks. They're like, and they can't deal with ambiguity. Ambiguity is the beauty, right? You see something that's like, how do we make something out of it? Open up your refrigerator and create something great out of it. And then resilient. You have to be in this for the long term. There's going to be a lot of short-term trips. Remember, strategic thinking, we're thinking about the future. We're trying to still understand how we think we're going to measure and monitor our progress. If we're relying on technology, there's going to be, twists and turns to that. So those are some of the things we need to look forward to. And I wonder what your experience is. Do you consider yourself strategic thinker? And this is a bunch of hogwash. You're saying, well, the book of Dan should be burned, right? All right. What's a strategic thinker? This is one of my favorite things. I am a strategic thinker. Great. This is a rarity, actually. People have to have this deep insight and ability to see what's going on in the future and then see that complexity, break it down into actionable components, right? They embrace it and then say, oh, here's how we can navigate around this and take advantage of these things. But not only that, they have to get all this data from everywhere. They have to convince people along the way. It has to be understood. And you have to have people thinking that they want to go that way. Being a strategic thinker is a great thing. Don't confuse it with strategic execution. Very few people are actually in the space of developing strategy and executing strategy. Strategic thinkers, again, we come down to this analytical proficiency. How analytical are you? Can you really dissect those problems, understand the patterns? If you tell me, oh, well, I'm not a numbers person, good luck, right? Innovative, thinking about things, a way to do things better. Every day I see these new AI things coming out. And the first thing I think about is like, oh, I wonder how this can be used here. I wonder how it can be used over here. Can that be applicable over there? And yet I see people say, oh, it can't be used. You can't do this. You can't do that. They're just like, give me the tool of the day and I'm off to the races. Decision making under uncertainty. Ooh. A strategic thinker is like, look, this may not be 100 certain. We know there's a certain amount of uncertainty here and risk, and we're still going to go forward with it. Here are the things that we've done to hopefully identify things that can go wrong, risks that can go wrong. Let's call uncertainty risks. Here are some of the ways we think we can mitigate it. Here's the ways we think we can anticipate it before it actually happens. Adaptive leadership key. How do we navigate this? How do we navigate up and down the organization? Foresight and long-term planning. We have to think about those incremental road steps, right? That's the complexity of everything, right? But how do we chunk this out into logical, reasonable steps that we can actually drive this forward? The ability to influence, strategies. You start for this kind of like the scope of work, but how do we influence the people and how do we drive that forward? And again, we're talking about resiliency, right? So strategic thinking and strategic thinkers are going to be needed more than ever in this age of AI. It's not going. It's not going to go away, right? So critical thinking is a skill that we need to develop. Again, people love to boast about being a critical thinker, but I've put together these little quizzes and questions that I can help quickly identify. Okay, no, that's nice, but they're not quite a critical thinker. Complex problem solver. You know, how much time and effort did they take into understanding the potential root causes? How did they evaluate which ones were the root causes? How much time and effort did they take into identifying all the potential solutions? What was their thought process when it narrowed it down to the vital few? Does the solution actually match the problem? Right. Again, I have a list of questions. I think I presented one of the other presentations that actually talk about this, right? And again, if you want to test your skills in evaluating this, go find a local politician, because these skills are sorely lacking in that field. Data literacy, I want you to be data literate. You need to be able to understand and communicate your data and show it in graphs and charts. But not only that, you need to understand the statistics behind it. And I'm not just talking about calculating an average, right? You have to have a greater foresight and understanding, almost like risk modeling and simulations. Data analytics is slicing and dicing that data to find little pieces of gold in it, right? Also, understanding the biases. Remember, in all of this stuff here, we all have our inherent biases. You have a bias. I have a bias. I told someone in one of the earlier chats, I made it very clear that when I'm thinking about decisions and stuff like that, and I'm really, contemplating stuff, I have a GPT. I wrote a chat that says, okay, Dan has a tendency to lean towards automation, AI, technology solutions, provide a different perspective, and I'll put it in there, and it will challenge my own norms for me, right? Especially if I'm alone. Innovation, and we just covered strategic thinking. I see there's some people here in the chat. I would really appreciate understand, what do you think about it? Do you think these skills are needed? And how many times if you went on LinkedIn right now or somewhere, you would see this? It would just be like marketing fluff on someone's resume, or maybe on your own resume. Do you think you can stand up to the challenge of being asked 6 questions on critical thinking, and you'd come by like, oh yeah, I have this nailed, or 6 hard questions about complex problem solving, and you can demonstrate that you have that competency? Data literacy, if I ask you a handful of questions and one would include 1 or 2 about statistics, are you comfortable with that? Or would you be challenged with that? Or are you going to shy away from it? Innovation, we'll talk about innovation, but the strategic thinking is the one that drives me crazy. Are you really a strategic thinker? Have you had that experience in strategic thinker? Have you been able to measure, monitor a longer term strategy? Did you just create a strategy and leave and you call that strategic? I mean, getting knocked down and having to pivot and stuff like that, it's tough to do when you're trying to explain an organization. How do we set those goals, objective measures, and targets for people to succeed, right? And then strategy development is another component that we're seeing quite a bit. of demand for it. And the strategy component is a little deeper. It's doing like, why not do a Porter's five forces model of your industry and business, right? If you're a consultant and you're going out and pimping services to your clients and you don't know how to do a force field, you don't know how to do a Porter's five forces analysis, woo, your lunch is going to be eaten. A pestle analysis. Let's do a pestle analysis and understand the things that can affect our organization. Let's do a quick, simple blue ocean strategy to get our feelers out there. Let's do a scenario planning case where we're thinking 10 years out. What are some of the crazy things from the pestle that might happen in 10 years? All that is in strategy, right? So that's another one that drives me crazy. So here are the things that, according to the Book of Dan, use with caution. The phrase data-driven, critical thinker, complex problem solving, strategic thinking, right? And a strategist. All those are great things to aspire to, but yet they can be easily dismissed with a handful of questions. We can easily dispel the folks that claim to have those skills. What are your thoughts? Drop me a note. Let me know what you think about this. And do you really believe AI and automation's coming? I showed you this slide here. I've been keeping, let's go back to this first slide, which I love right here, right? All these little things, I've been keeping track of all the great things going on in AI. I just heard Moderna partnered with OpenAI to leverage AI. There's a lot of healthcare organizations that have come out and admit that the AI can diagnose just as good as the doctors, right? You can self-diagnose essentially if you start getting your medical records in place. And I know there's concerns. Are they legitimate concerns, or are they just excuses to delay learning and implementing AI? People will say, well, AI can be wrong. Yep, so can humans. AI may not be secure for your corporate data. Well, guess what? Your employees are walking out with that data as well. AI, if it's wrong, it has bias. Guess what? We all have bias, right? So this is coming around. It's getting better and better. AI hallucinates. I hear that one quite a bit. It's getting better. It's getting better. AI, with the adoption of these new vector databases where you have memory and you can go back and forth, is amazing. There is no excuse not to engage and leverage AI today. You need to do so. And please don't tell me that you're going to let your organization dictate your future. Well, my company won't pay for my training. My company won't pay for OpenAI chatbots. Are you going to allow them to tether you to that desk, or are you willing to invest in yourself? There's nothing worse than an employee that's not willing to invest their own time and money in themselves, but expect the organization to do so. So these are some critical things. We were talking about what is strategic thinking, and we started by talking about strategic and tactical. I hope you have a better idea of where you fit in this. We talked about why strategic thinking is in demand in the age of AI. We have all this great stuff coming out that we need to understand and synthesize and figure out how to use within our organization. We talked about strategic thinking and what does that mean, navigating these complex problem solvers. And I gave you a clue. If someone tells you and they can't explain it to you, especially if they're higher ranking or they're outside, like a politician or something. I love picking on politicians, right? If a politician, they say, what's complex? That is the code word for I don't understand it myself. So say, give me a chance. Break it down for me. If it's complex, then how are you voting on this, or how do you understand it? So those are just some key tools out there. Hey, drop some comments in there. If maybe I'll release my little questions that I use to evaluate critical thinkers, right? I have a handful of questions. I can quickly start sorting through this, the complex problem solvers. That might be something I do later on in the future, but I hope you get some interesting knowledge out of this. I hope you're embracing AI and automation. And there are ways to develop the skills, right? The complex problem solving. There's Lean Six Sigma, data literacy. There's Lean Six Sigma training, data analytics. There's Lean Six Sigma thinking, innovation. right? How do we identify innovative solutions? How do we evaluate them? How do we decide which ones we're going with? How do we test them, right? There's all sorts of training programs and stuff that you can invest in to get this. But please spend the $20 a month and start to learn how to use Chat GPT, Claude, Gemini Pro, whichever one you want. I have a dozen engines that I use. Don't get left behind. You're going to be leveraged by AI or you leverage AI. The choice is yours. The choice is yours. It's about you. Take control of your lives. Take control of your destiny. And this train is picking up speed and not slowing down. Make sure you get on it because it's going to be harder and harder and harder to get on this train. So have a great day, folks. It's a beautiful Monday. Learn something new. Do something cool, right? Do cool work for cool people. And that's a reading from the Book of Dan.